In this video, I am going to talk about PACL, VACL, and also RACL interaction. Let me explain the interaction between these ACLs, okay, with two scenarios. In this first scenario, in the top scenario, as you can see, we have a simple switch, a layer 2 switch, for example, and we configured VLAN 10 in this switch, and VLAN 10 has two interfaces. One interface connected to the left PC and other interface connected to the right PC. Okay, both of them are members of the VLAN 10 and they have connectivity to each other. Now we configure PACL or port ACL on one interface. For example, you know that PACL only can filter traffic on incoming direction on one interface, not outgoing direction. Okay, because of that, assume that this is our PACL, as you can see here, port ACL we configured, and this PACL, okay, can filter traffic incoming or entering to the interface of switch. Also, we configured VACL. You know that VACL doesn't have direction. Actually, VACL should apply to one VLAN or multiple VLANs actually, okay? Because of that, it's not so correct that or it's not so right that we say, for example, outbound VACL or inbound VACL. But because I'm going to talk about according to the Cisco documentation, here we have two terms, inbound VACL, outbound VACL, but actually we don't have inbound VACL or outbound VACL, we have VACL, okay? And here, as you can see, now we have PACL, and also we configured VACL for VLAN 10. Actually, we can say, for example, this is the fast Ethernet 01. We configured one ACL on this interface, for example, on the interface fast Ethernet 01, I configured IP access group, okay, and then the name of ACL, for example, ACL1 in on this interface in inbound direction. Okay, and also we configured one VLAN access map. For example, the name of VLAN access map is A10, okay, access map 10, and with this command VLAN filter, then A10 VLAN list 10, we applied the VLAN access map, okay, to the VLAN 10. Actually, now we have VACL and PACL on this switch. What is the order of the processing? This is the topic that I'm going to talk about that. About the order of processing, don't forget, every time and always the PACL is the first ACL that we should process. And because of that, here you can see first, inbound PACL or port ACL or port access control list on the switch port should work. Here, as you can see, this is the first ACL that we will see the effect of this ACL. Maybe some traffic denied and some traffic permitted. If some traffic permitted with the PACL, those traffic go to the VLAN ACL. Here you can see inbound VACL and outbound VACL. Again, let me to emphasize that we don't have inbound and outbound VACL. We have VACL. But maybe it's a good practice to talk with the terminology of the Cisco. Because of that, we can say inbound VACL means the VACL on for example, interface on the incoming interface and outgoing interface. But you know that we don't apply the VACL to the interface. Because of that, we can say both of them occur simultaneously. This is the order of processing of PACL and VACL. Let me to review. Bridge traffic processing order within the same VLAN is first, inbound PACL on the switch port. This is the first ACL that should process, means this ACL, and permitted traffic with the PACL, okay, should match with the, should filter with the VACL. Inbound VACL on the VLAN, outbound VACL on the VLAN. This is the bridge traffic processing order within the same VLAN, okay. But now let me to explain a little complex scenario. In the next scenario, in the bottom scenario, as you can see, we have one MLS or multi-layer switch. You know that in multi-layer switch, we can route traffic from one VLAN to other VLAN. Assume that here we configured interface VLAN 10, okay, and also interface VLAN 20. You know that between these two interface VLAN, or between these two switch virtual interface, we have a router, okay, and you know that we can configure the RACL and we can apply it to the interface VLAN 10 and also interface VLAN 1. For example, here we have one RACL applied to the VLAN 10, or interface VLAN 10 actually, and one other ACL applied to the interface VLAN 20. Now I'm going to talk about if we have PACL, VACL, okay, in both VLAN and also RACL, what is the processing order? Look at here, I configured one PACL, I configured VACL in both VLAN 10 and VLAN 20. I configured RACL, okay, in for example, interface VLAN 10 and interface VLAN 20. What is the order? It is so easy. Look at here again. The first ACL that should check, that should, for example, filter traffic, is the PACL. Inbound PACL on the switchboard. You know it. The second, okay, step is the VACL in the source VLAN, in the VLAN 10. Assume that we send traffic from VLAN 10 to VLAN 20, okay? Because of that, the VACL of the VLAN 10 has priority, has preference. After that, because the traffic now is received by the RACL applied to the interface VLAN 10, the next step is the inbound ACL or RACL on the SVI or on the switched virtual interface. After that, traffic should enter to the VLAN 20. Again here, we have one RACL. I assume that this is in outbound direction, okay? Because of that here, outbound ACL is the next step, step 4. And finally, we have VACL, okay? When traffic entered to the VLAN 20, okay? Here we have VACL, and this VACL is the, for example, last ACL that we check. Because of that here, inbound VACL and outbound VACL again emphasize to the VACL of VLAN 10, VACL of VLAN 20. Actually, we don't have inbound VACL or outbound VACL. Inbound VACL means VACL of source VLAN, and outbound VACL means VACL of destination VLAN. Because of that, in the bridge traffic, okay, VACL of source VLAN and VACL of destination VLAN, both of them for VLAN 10. Because of that, it's not so right to say outbound and inbound VACL. Because of that, about the bridge traffic processing, we can say first PACL, second VACL. About the routed traffic processing order, we can say first PACL, second VACL on the source VLAN, third incoming RACL or inbound ACL, okay, RACL on the source VLAN SVI or switch virtual interface, then again outgoing RACL on the destination VLAN interface VLAN or SVI, and finally VACL on the destination VLAN. This is the order. This is the PACL, VACL and RACL interaction. But before I finish this video, let me to give you a little more information about a specific type of ACL that maybe you encounter in newer, for example, technologies. You know that we have a special type of ACL. We call it DACL. DACL is the abbreviation of the downloadable, okay, ACL. What is the DACL? Let me a little explain it. Look at here. In some cases, in some, for example, features, some technologies, we use Cisco ISE, okay, Identity Service Engine, for the authentication, for for authorization, for accounting. Assume that we use Cisco ISE, okay, as the radius authentication server, okay. When a client wants to connect to the network, first it should authenticate with the Cisco ISE, okay? After authentication, Cisco ISE should send one ACL, okay? We call it the authorization option. Actually, with authorization option, Cisco ISE should send one ACL to the switch, okay? And this ACL should apply to the interface of switch. This is like the PACL, but it is not PACL because this is downloaded from the